video, we will see the reign of Queen Isabel II or Isabella II, and also the period that is called the 6 years of democracy, or in Spanish, el sexenio democrático. So as we saw in the previous periods, the years of the regency of Maria Cristina, who was Isabel's mother, had been quite turbulent. There had been a Carlist War that finally, in which finally the Carlists had been defeated. There had been some approaches to the progressists, to the bourgeoisie, the liberals, in order to have some support and also try to raise some money. After the war, and there had been a change, and all the criticisms against Maria Cristina and her poor management, she had been deposed from the throne as a regent, and she was forced to leave Spain. And General Espartero, who had been the general in charge of the Carlist War, just was named regent. But soon the problems had appeared, and 3 years later, they decided to solve the problem of the regencies, naming Isabel or Isabella of age. So, she was declared of age, so fue declarada mayor de edad when she was just 13. So this is the situation that we start on today. So she was a teenager. Her mother was not here. Her father was dead. Maybe we can just try to understand why her reign was also full of mistakes and errors. Okay, if we try to understand Isabel's situation, she had not even been well educated to be a queen. She was not a prepared queen. Okay, when she was little, her mother had been intriguing, just caring for her own businesses and not so much about her daughter. So she was almost illiterate when she became queen, which made her extremely vulnerable to the influences of all those politicians that were around her and basically taking decisions for her. So the same way that the previous reign of Fernando, we can classify her reign in different periods according to the parties that were that controlled the situation. By this moment, there were elections, although it were elections with a censitary suffrage. So in theory, the governments had been voted, but the manipulation of these elections was constant. And it was the king, or the queen in this case, had the capacity to depose government and call for elections in order to change it. So the first period was dominated by the moderates, yes, so the liberals that were in the middle, were not too progressive and were not too conservative, yeah. The moderate leader was General Narváez, and he enacted the Constitution of 1848, that we can say that somehow was more conservative or less progressive than the previous constitution of 1837. Yeah, so the sovereignty, okay, this is an error, the sovereignty was shared between the queen and the Cortes. Yeah, in the previous constitution, they expressed that national sovereignty, so not shared between the Cortes and the queen. Yeah, so it was like one step back. In this period, there were important investment in public works. Okay, so to build, they were the first decisions on just trying to fix bridges and roads. Okay, Europe was way more advanced in this sense. So Spain started to realize that they had not invested in infrastructures and that industrialization would be impossible without that. The Guardia Civil was created in 1844 as a kind of police for the rural areas to make them safer. So this was related with the previous thing, okay? So in order to make possible that trade occurred between territories, roads had to be well paved and also had to be safe. And in Spain, roads were very unsafe, and it was very likely that you were assaulted on a road. Yeah, so that is why they created the Guardia Civil. But soon problems started to appear. First Narváez and later Bravo Murillo will accumulate more power than what they should have in the government and in the parliament. So Narváez ended up being substituted by Bravo Murillo. And it was going to be Bravo Murillo that it was more conservative, so less moderate in reality, was the one that signed the first concordat with the Holy See. Okay, what is a concordat? A concordat is an agreement, an international treaty between one country and the Holy See. And what is the Holy See? La Santa Sede. And what is that? La Santa Sede is the representation of the Pope. So it was an agreement between the state of Spain, the Kingdom of Spain, and the Pope. Remember that as you could imagine, the relations were broken since the confiscations of 1835. Yeah. So in 1851, by signing this concordat, more or less the issues between the Church and the state of Spain were solved. So like at this moment, what they decided was just to give some compensations to the Church for the confiscations. The renovation, so new concordats have been continuously signed by Spain, between the Spain and the Holy See since then, and we continue paying the Catholic Church many things. So also in this period, that was the Second Carlist War, that as you have seen in the video, was the shorter one and the less relevant of the three, the most concentrated in area. And as the consequence of these governments that were very authoritarian, and the neglection that the progressive liberals had, like Isabella just ignored them, they ended up staging a revolt in 1854. They spent the whole 19th century with revolts supported by the military. So this revolt led to the Progressive Biennium. So just 2 years of progressive liberals in charge, with this model of of consuls that maybe it sounds familiar to you, O'Donnell and Espartero. So Espartero had returned. And in this period, there were some important decisions. One was a second confiscation in 1855 that not only confiscated church property, but also communal property. So they tried to emulate what had been done in England with the Enclosure Acts, that were those laws that privatize common land. And this was also a pretty bad idea. Not only the execution like the other one, but this was a bad idea in the sense that by privatizing the common land, a lot of people that used that common land lost it. And again, the money that they made with this was very little. Okay, so it was not very profitable. They had time to draft a new constitution that was quite progressive, but this constitution never was passed. Okay, this constitution sometimes is called the non nata. Yeah, so that the non-born constitution, because although they had the document, they never approved it. So we can say that this this progressive biennium is just like what divides the reign of Isabella in two. After this, we have like this last 12 years of her reign between 1856 and 1868 that were quite a turbulent period. Okay, there were constant disagreements between the liberal moderates and so the moderates and the Liberal Union, that in theory the Liberal Union was more progressive, but in reality it wasn't. And there were constant changes in the government, and also a growing opposition. So new political parties that were, we can say, more to the left of the progressives, more influenced by the ideas that had been defended in the revolutions of 1848 in Europe, appeared. Yes, so we start talking about Democrats and Republicans. So these Democrats and Republicans defended universal male suffrage, and defended a real equality, not only like in front of the law, but also in all kinds of civil rights and even like labor legislation. In the case of the Republicans, also they demanded a republic. So several, like these groups and a part of the progressive liberals signed the Ostende Pact in 1868 with the purpose of trying to dethrone Isabel and to create a new liberal government that will put into practice universal suffrage, considering that having a real democracy with universal male suffrage will put an end to this constant changes in governments and these constant conspirations, political conspirations. So at the end, 2 years later, in 1868, the Glorious Revolution just expelled Isabel from Spain. So this is like what you have here, like Agencia Embajada se colocan reyes. We will see why is that. So she had to leave Spain, but the problem was that there was more a refusal to everything that had been related with Isabel's government but then there was a lack of union on the proposals on what to do. So at the beginning, they just had like a regency by General Serrano. Yes, so a military leader was like took charge of the situation while they were deciding what to do. Yeah, they summoned the Cortes. They called for elections, and they created a new parliament that approved a new constitution in 1869 that established universal male suffrage and in general added more rights and freedoms for the citizens. Yeah, so this was going to be the most progressive constitution of all the constitutions that we have seen this far. But they had the problem of what to do. Okay, so they had this like a Serrano as a regent, but they needed a new king. Okay, the idea of a republic was too advanced for most of the Spanish politicians and also for the Spanish elite. Yeah, so they tried to find a new monarch. So they went to around Europe. They used their diplomacy, and they tried to find someone that was suitable for this role. I remember that by this moment there had been Italy and Germany were under a process of unification. So there were many people considered of being of royal families that had lost their kingdoms. So there were several candidates that were considered suitable because they were from royal families. And I know that this is a bit awkward for us, but they believed there had to be someone from another royal family, as if they were somehow, I don't know, genetically different or something. So they ended up choosing Amadeo de Saboya, who was of the same, like of the family that was was starting to rule in the kingdom of Italy. Yeah. The problem was that the general that had elected him and defended his candidacy, that was General Prim, was assassinated before Amadeo de Saboya arrived to Spain. So when he arrived, his main supporter had died. So soon Amadeo realized that no one really wanted him in Spain. He didn't have many supporters because like an important part, so there were Carlists, yeah, there were people that wanted the Bourbons back, yeah, and then there were the Republicans that wanted a republic. So at the end, there was a very small percentage of people that supported Amadeo. We have to say that although he just ruled for 2 years, he tried to put into practice a different way of ruling, okay, very different to the Bourbons. But no one supported him. He wanted to do things according to the law. He didn't want to manipulate elections, and that was not well received here. So he ended up abdicating just 2 years after, in what had been a complete failure. So after the failure of Amadeo de Saboya, what could they do? They had no other option than proclaiming a first republic. Okay, a republic. The problem was that, again, the same as it had occurred with Amadeo, was that there was very few people that really supported the republic. So they had just accepted it because they didn't know what to do. So this republic was born with very few supporters, and that was a terrible way of starting. So from the very beginning, different fronts open up. A third war by the Carlists outburst. There were demands by certain regions of more autonomy, so to develop a federal system of a republic. In general, even the Republicans were divided, discussing the different types of republic that they could design. So there was a lot of internal division, a lot of opponents to the republic, and in less than a year that it lasted, the republic had 4 presidents. Some of them just lasted 1 month. So they drafted a constitution that also didn't have time to be passed, and they did one thing that will last for long, that was creating the peseta, okay, that, as you know, was going to last more than 100 years until not so long ago. So with all this disaster, the lack of capacity of the Republican presidents of controlling the situation, the Carlist War, the Canton revolts and all that. So by the end of 1874, another coup staged by General Pavia dissolved the Cortes, and again, the General Serrano became the head of a state until they decided what to do. But basically, it was almost decided by this time that a new Bourbon, Isabel's son, Alfonso, will restore the Bourbons on the throne. And that is what we will see in the next class. I know that there's a lot of information. I recommend you to make a timeline to try to remember all these different periods. I won't ask you very detailed things about all the presidents, but you need to know the different periods at least. And that's it. Bye-bye.